Hi, welcome to the show, Claire. I wanted to have you here. We'll tell your whole story here. We'll get started with how we met and why you're here. But you are someone who has ditched your lawyer dream in
hmm
pursuit of ocean exploration. And we'll get more into that and what that means and what you have coming up at the end of the summer. But first of all, just thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me. I think the thanks is to you at the end of it.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, so listen, we met through Ashley Buggy, and I have had a number of people on the show who I've met through her because she is surrounded by a lot of really interesting people doing a lot of interesting things in the world. I originally met her through her mother. Her mother's name is Lisa, and she and I met in an airport and talking about books. And then it turns out Ashley had written a book. She's also a widow, as I am, and she has young children, as I once did. My son is now grown, so we just made this connection, and now I don't know, at least a dozen people have come through the show, including yourself, to share their story. And it's always an interesting one. So the audience can look forward to that. I mentioned that you are someone who has ditched your lawyer dream. So let's go back a little bit further because law school is a big deal, costs a lot of money, costs a lot of effort and interest. No one really enters that lightly. So what about you growing up wanted to become a lawyer? And then let's talk about the shift to what you're doing now.
Yeah. The dream to become a lawyer probably didn't hit me until my early 20s when I was in college. I've always had this passion for the environment, the ocean, human rights, the inexhaustible variety that is, humanity, and culture and everything like that. And I thought the best way to advocate for those things, to get involved in those things was through a legal perspective, through the legal context. So when I was in
That's what
college,
I wondered. I wondered if that was the start for you. It's like, I can change the world as a lawyer. Is that what you
yeah,
were thinking of? Yeah.
it
Your
was.
corner of the world, right?
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people have that, illusion. And I hate to say it, like, not to say that the legal profession isn't noble or important because it truly is. But I think a lot of people go into it with this ideology of, I can really like make this huge change. And the truth is, it's probably going to be on a much smaller scale, you know? And in college, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do because I can really advocate for these things. I can make the change I want to make. I can see that change. But I also want to take some time, like throughout the next couple of years, to like move slow before I start law school. I don't immediately want to do this. All right, I'm out of undergrad. Now I'm going to go to law school and then become an attorney. I'm like, I want to take some time. I want to experiment a little bit. Like if I'm going to do international law or environmental law, which was my trajectory, I want to like build a little bit more of a background. I want to travel while I'm young, but also like really get to know if I'm going
Yeah.
to do national law, like who this affects.
Yeah.
And
And learning who you're fighting for, right? Learning more upfront about what you're fighting for. It's like an engineer who comes in uh, to a building he's never touched, set foot on. Like I've worked with different people in different industries or talked with people in different industries who maybe they are working hands-on in something, say like a generator, and then an engineer comes in and they have to have spent time in that place. Kind of same thing. Like you have to explore the world you want to work in. Is that
exactly.
your turn? Yeah. Mhm.
But also making sure like the people who are affected like have a space to communicate like those needs as well, you know?
Mhm.
But then like I really want to work more like hands-on in the environmental realm, but also like, the diplomacy realm. So I want to take time to experiment. So my plan was okay, after I graduate college, I'm going to work for a year in Spain as an English teacher. Then I'm going to do the Peace Corps for a year, and then we'll figure it out from there. If I'm going to do law school, or I'm going to try to have a little bit more professional experience. Um, so after I graduated, I had that lined up. I was going to go to Spain, then I was going to go to do the Peace Corps. But this was COVID, so I got stuck in Spain, and then Peace Corps service got canceled. So ended up staying in Spain a second year. And as much
So
as I love,
stuck in Spain, let's go back to that for a second.
yeah,
Stuck in Spain. How long had you planned to be there?
only a year. And then I was supposed to do the Peace Corps immediately after.
And how long had you been there?
How long was I in Spain?
Yeah, how long had you been in there when you got stuck?
I think it was probably about like 6 months at that point.
Okay, so you were a little acclimated then. You didn't go over and then suddenly you're stuck and now you're in Spain staying longer than planned. So you ended up staying extra time there. And at what point, if at all, did you see that as an opportunity, or did it always feel stuck? Like, what did you do with that reality that, you're in a foreign country and you're there much longer than you plan to be? Getting stuck in a foreign country is a pretty rare thing, not so much during COVID, but in general.
I honestly saw it as an opportunity immediately. You know, I had the choice of, do I just kind of allow myself to sit here and be afraid and kind of wallow in the situation, or really take the time to sit with myself and figure out, like, all right, like, right now I have a lot going for me. I have the safety net of being on a visa here, so I don't have to worry about like figuring out how to get out of here if I can. You know, I still had a job, so I still had an income. And now it was time to just figure out, like, all right, what can I do with all this excess free time? You know? And during that time was when I got the notification, oh, hey, like Peace Corps service is canceled, blah, blah, blah. And I saw that, and it sounds weird, but I thought, thank God, because I don't think that that's what was meant for me at that time.
Did you think that before it was canceled? Were you feeling that way before it was canceled, or was it getting canceled that made you realize that that wasn't what you wanted?
I had some reservations before. I had some questions of whether or not it was truly what I wanted to do, even though I worked for it all through college. Basically.
Yeah, it's a big commitment.
Yeah. But I was already questioning it before, so when I saw that, it was like, thank you for making that decision for me.
Yeah. Out of your hands. Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about what happened next, and also talk more about what's happening in August, which is really all the changes you made that we're talking about now led up to this. So
yeah.
We'll talk more with you and get back in just a moment. Hi, Claire. We're back talking with you about your decision to really like when you got stuck during COVID, and you got stuck in Spain during COVID, and the Peace Corps mission that you were going to go on was canceled. Everything really just was upended for you, and you saw it as an opportunity to go in a completely different direction, which we're getting to this big exploration that you'll be part of in August. So you've made that decision. You're on a whole different trajectory. And did that feel right? What did it feel like for that to feel right now that you've made those big changes, or some of the changes were made for you?
I feel like some of them were made for me. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that in a second. But I truly believe that, deep down, I knew, like, I don't want this. I don't think I want this. Like, I really am feeling this call to something else. And I feel like I've known all along that this is what I want instead. But I wasn't actively making those decisions. I was kind of just sitting where I was and like, no, I better follow this path. And then it was just kind of take like whatever is out there, if there is anything, kind of just took me in a separate direction.
And what happened next?
Okay. So after the Peace Corps service got canceled, stayed in Spain another year, loved it, but was getting way too comfortable. Was still trying to think about law school, but I wasn't ready for law school. So I'm like, you know what? Because I'm, still considering everything, I'm going to go and get a master's in international law at this international university in Costa Rica in Ciudad Colon, and see if that's what I want to do, So went and did that. Honestly, it is what made me realize I don't want to do law, but I still was like, oh, I'm going to keep going. But it was the greatest decision I've ever made, because now I have friends all over the world because of it. I'm able to apply like my knowledge in international law to so many different spaces. And I lived in Costa Rica for a year. How amazing is that, So it truly was incredibly like formative. So then after that, came back to the US, started working at a corporate law firm, hated it. This was when I realized, oh, this isn't for me, but I'm still going to try. But there was still this pull of like, I really want to go back to the world of ocean advocacy and marine sciences, but also like, maybe even getting into storytelling and things like that, because I'm just not happy with sitting in an office and people being miserable all the time. So worked there, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to stick with this for a little bit. If I don't like it, I'm going to quit. Or if I'm not getting anything that's more related to international law, which I didn't, was getting interview after interview, but nothing stuck, I realized, okay, this isn't for me. So I'm going to quit, travel for a couple of months, do some diving, and then figure out where I want to go from there. And doing that was when I realized, okay, no, I've got to make a change. I need to go back to what it is I've always wanted to do. I need to get back into ocean advocacy because this legal path is just not for me anymore. But I still had this weird almost shame, this like shameful feeling of I can't stop now. I can't stop now. Like I've gone this far. It's so much time and so much money and so much energy. Like, no. So I'm going to keep going. I'm still going to try, you know.
So when you made the decision to go back to what you love, so you talked about law school in your 20s. So when we talk about ocean advocacy, let's get real specific and kind of talk it down into what about that did you think you wanted to do? And what how did that connect to law at all? Because I guess advocacy and you're wanting to learn how to legally fight for these things, but what about ocean advocacy and exploration had you dreamed about? Was that as a kid because you're a diver? What was it that made you want to go in this pursuit?
It was definitely a nexus of all of those things. Like as a kid, I just had an absolute obsession with the ocean, obsession with nature. I was the kid who was like binge watching National Geographic and Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
And then as I got older and I got into diving, that was a huge thing too. My undergraduate degree was actually in coastal environmental sciences. So I do have a science background to begin with. I kind of threw it away for a couple of years.
So you really were getting back to what you'd always wanted. You just weren't sure how you were going to use it.
Exactly.
Okay. So then let's move ahead a little bit. And so at what point did you start to become involved with the organization that we'll talk about your exploration that's happening in August, but at what point did you come in contact with them? And how did you seek them out or how did that happen?
So that was probably in about, like, I'd say May of last year. So May of 2024, because I came back to Orlando after traveling, was working at a law firm and again, couldn't stand it. So, but I had a better idea of what it is I wanted to do moving forward. So I started to network with different people on LinkedIn, what to do. And I found, I think this person's been on your show as well, on LinkedIn, a woman by the name of Tiffany Duong, who is part of the Seabird Foundation. And through her, I just messaged her on LinkedIn and was like, hey, you seem to kind of be doing a very similar trajectory to what I'm trying to do.
Even down to leaving law.
Yeah.
Yeah. And practicing law at the time.
Yeah. I do want to clarify, I was not an attorney. I was just a paralegal who was preparing.
No, but she was. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, but she was. Yeah.
Yes, but she was. And so connected with her and, you know, had a couple of Zoom calls with her and found out about the seabirds through her.
And tell us just briefly about the seabirds, just to remind our audience.
Yeah, so the Seabirds is a 501c3 nonprofit that is dedicated to inclusive and ethical community-based citizen science project, and it's all women. Mm-hmm. So they're a pretty amazing organization, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of what they do, but just a little overview. Yeah. But yeah, so started using her as a mentor a little bit and still continued to work at this law firm. I was like, I really don't like this. I'm still not happy. And then around November, I saw, I think she actually shared the post from the Seabirds about they're doing a citizen science project in the Arctic, which we'll get to in a minute. But that's how I found the current organization that I'm going to be.
And did that automatically feel like an amazing fit for you?
Oh, it did. It felt unreal. It felt like I cannot believe that this has actually fallen into my lap right now.
And that it exists and that you get to go. And so we'll take a break in here in just a second, but was it, you know, one of the things that we talked about, I've talked about on the show before was like the qualifications to go on these explorations. And you obviously had quite a bit, like you said, you had the science background, you were a diver, obviously, these things. So were there any other things that you felt like I really need to improve upon, or did you feel ready? Do you feel ready for August? Or was there, had everything you'd been doing and changing and everything that was happening prepared you for this?
Honestly, yes. I have to admit, I don't know what it's going to be like living on a research vessel for almost 3 weeks straight. That's going to be new. But in regard to everything else, I believe so. You know, when I was in my undergrad, I did a lot of the data collection that we're going, like the different types of methods that we will be using. So I'm accustomed to that. You know, the traveling's gotten me used to that. Even having the background in international law and being able to understand, you know, what this research is going to mean, not just for ourselves, not just for, you know, NOAA, but in general for like the world and what it can have for like future like climate and ocean policy. So I really do feel like in a lot of ways, this has like properly prepared me, having the international experience, having the, oceanographic and marine science like research experience, even though it's been a while, So I think every like crazy zigzag that I've had that doesn't
Such is life, right? Such is life. Yeah.
exactly.
We can't know it at the time, but oftentimes the detours lead us right exactly where we're supposed to be. Let's take a break, Claire. We'll talk more. We'll talk about the exploration you're going on in August to give more detail about why it's important, where you're going, and what you hope to find. We'll be back in just a moment. We are finishing up with you, Claire, and we've talked about how the many decisions you've made to get where you are, and some of those decisions were made for you, like during COVID, but also how that trajectory feels right on time for you to be able to do this exploration that's coming up in August. So tell us about how excited you are, but also what you'll be doing as part of this project, what the project is, who you partner with, all the things.
Okay. So I'm incredibly excited. Words can't even explain how excited I am that I get to do this. This has fallen into my lap, and a career transition is taking me to somewhere like the Arctic. I would have never thought that. So it's pretty incredible. And every day I wake up and I just get to think, I get to do that, So a little bit about the project. The Seabirds is working on this project called Project Blue Echo, and it's going to be looking at acoustic tracking as well as general water quality sampling of this area that is considered a data desert. So with that acoustic data, we can use to track different migratory.
What's a data desert? Sorry to interrupt you. What's a data? Just for some of us who don't know these terms.
A data desert just means somewhere where there's not a lot of information regarding. There's not a lot of data and research that's been collected in that region.
And so what about this region is important for you to go there? Why there of all places? And obviously this costs money, time, planning. So this is like the prime spot that Seabird is choosing to go for what reason?
Mm-hmm. So the Arctic is a constantly changing climate. It is forever changing and changing at an incredibly rapid pace. And what happens in the Arctic Circle and the Arctic Ocean trickles down to affect the rest of the oceans in the rest of the world. So being able to understand what the water quality is like up there or any other data related to that is going to be incredibly important for understanding like the future of how our climate affects this region and how the ocean up there is constantly changing and in flux. And maybe by looking at that and having that base as a research, having that research as a base for future studies or longitudinal studies, we can look at the ocean, the health of the ocean as a whole.
Tell us what you would expect while out on this exploration. Like there's the parts that you've never done before, right? You've never gone on a vessel and lived on a vessel for 3 weeks. There's all these different things that you'll be doing because you'll be gone for 3 weeks. You have traveled. There are other things that you've done that have prepared you for this. But what do you think? What are your expectations of it? Or what are the goals of the mission for the people who are going? How many people are going? And you'll be gone for 3 weeks.
Okay. So off the top of my head, I don't know exactly how many people are going. But in regard to like what I want to see and what I hope to get out of this is, first of all, I hope that whatever data we collect is going to help in the construction of creating necessary climate policy, especially in the Arctic, as well as having this data, being submitted through NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, reaches a broader audience. And because that organization is so pivotal and so important, that will be used in the future or even in the present to be able to create more awareness around why we need to protect the Arctic and our oceans in general, and draw more attention to the necessity of climate sciences and how it affects our oceans directly. So that is my hope with what we get out of it. Now, what I personally hope to gain out of it, a shift in my career towards what I've always wanted to do and just be hit with every challenge that I probably didn't think I would face, but understanding how to face it moving forward and how that's going to make me a more resilient person if I want, not if, but when I start getting more into this field.
And do you feel like so you've definitely left behind the law approach to all of this. Now, obviously, we talked about how the things that you've done have helped you prepare, even from the legal standpoint, or understanding the importance of how this trickles into other areas of ocean reform and how we treat the ocean and all those things.
Mhm.
So, where do you see this taking your career? What do you obviously will go on this exploration and maybe others as well, this expedition. So, where do you see this taking you in terms of a career, earning a living, changing your little corner of the world or the big oceans of the world?
You know, truthfully, I don't have a specific answer to that because I know whatever comes with this is going to draw me into the right direction. I'm going to meet the people I need to meet. I'm going to be able to put myself on a platform to be able to, you know, spread my knowledge and share my knowledge of, the intersection, whether it's, you know, science in general, or this exploration path, or being able to talk about the intersectionality of law and international environmental policy and just data in general. I really don't have a doubt in my mind that this is going to take me incredible places, but I do not have a specific answer to where I think this is going to take me. I just know it's going to take me farther than I could ever have imagined.
Well, and it's hard to know until you get out there. So
Mm.
I think that everything you've done to this point to have this opportunity, it's like the decisions you've made along the way, it helps you get to the next step. And we don't always know what that next step is till we're right in front of it. So I appreciate you being here. I loved sharing your story, and I'll be definitely following up with all of you with seabirds and after you go on this exploration to find out what you've learned. So thanks for sharing your story.
And thank you for allowing me to share it.
Yeah.
More I wish to share it, but
Yeah.
I'm grateful that we had this time, and thank you.
Yeah. Stay safe.